Welcome to the Semper AI Digest. I'm Tomas, your AI research lead, always scanning the horizon for what's next.
And I'm Aiva. Together, we keep you sharp, informed, and ahead of the curve.
Let's get into it. All right, buckle up, AI enthusiasts, because if you blinked during the past couple weeks, you missed, well, basically everything. I'm Tomas.
And I'm Aiva. Welcome to Semper AI Digest, where we break down the latest in artificial intelligence.
So here's the thing. Google just dropped what might be their biggest robotics announcement ever. We're talking Gemini Robotics 2, a completely new intelligence layer that gives robots whole body control, advanced dexterity, and get this, multi-robot collaboration, like actual robot teams working together.
And that's not even all they announced. We've also got major pricing cuts from OpenAI that are honestly pretty wild. A whole suite of new Gemini models hitting different speed and cost points, and some genuinely fascinating discussion about how benchmark scores actually work.
Yeah, that OpenAI benchmark thread is nerdy in the best way. But okay, we need to start with the robots, because this is legitimately sci-fi stuff becoming real. Aiva, have you seen the demos?
I have, and I'll admit, I went in expecting the usual controlled environment, perfect lighting, cherry-picked success situation. But some of these demos are surprisingly robust.
Right? So let's break down what Google actually announced here. Gemini Robotics 2 is essentially the brain, the intelligence layer that sits on top of physical robots. And the key innovation is this new model they're calling Gemini Robotics ER2. ER stands for Embodied Reasoning.
Which is a term we should probably unpack.
Yes, okay, so think about how you tackle a complex task. Let's say someone asks you to organize a messy garage. You don't just start grabbing random things. You observe the space, you make a plan, maybe tools go on the pegboard, boxes get stacked by size, recycling goes in bins. Then you execute that plan step by step, adjusting as you go if something doesn't fit or if you find something unexpected.
Right, there's this high-level planning layer happening before and during the physical actions.
Exactly. And that's what Gemini Robotics ER2 does. It acts as the robot's high-level brain. It observes the environment, reasons about what actions are needed, coordinates with the vision language action model that actually controls the motors and movements, and then tracks progress until the job is done.
The self-correction piece is what really caught my attention. According to the announcement, if a step fails, the robot can adjust and try a different approach. That's a huge deal because historically, robots would just stop or keep trying the exact same failed action over and over.
Oh, absolutely. And Google showed this off in a demo where they had two different robot platforms, Apollo and Duo, working together to clean up a garage. The reasoning model broke down the task, assigned different robots to different jobs, and they coordinated in real time.
Okay, but let's get real for a second. How controlled was this environment? Because we've been burned before by robot demos that look amazing and then turn out to require perfect conditions.
That's fair to ask. From what we can see in the footage, it's an actual garage with real clutter, not like a lab setup with QR codes everywhere. They specifically mentioned the robots handling completely novel situations and developing emergent recovery behaviors. There's one clip showing 20 minutes of uninterrupted real-time tool handling.
20 minutes continuous is actually impressive. Most demos are heavily edited.
Right. And here's what I think is the bigger picture. This isn't just about one robot doing one task well. It's about a generalizable intelligence layer that can work with different robot bodies. They showed it on Apollo, on Duo, on the FR3 Duo platform. That portability is huge.
That does suggest they've abstracted the intelligence away from the specific hardware, which is architecturally important. If the same model can drive different physical forms,
It's like having a driver's license that works for cars, trucks, and motorcycles. The fundamental understanding of navigation and control transfers across platforms. And think about the implications for manufacturing, for warehouses, for eventually, and I know this sounds like sci-fi, domestic robots.
Okay, wait, let's pump the brakes a little on the domestic robot vision. We're still probably years away from having something in your home that can reliably fold laundry without occasionally folding the cat.
Okay, that's a fair point, and a concerning mental image.
But I will say the multi-robot collaboration aspect is legitimately exciting for industrial applications. If you can have robots that coordinate on complex tasks without needing every single movement pre-programmed, that changes the economics significantly.
Yes, because right now, setting up robots for manufacturing is this incredibly expensive, time-consuming process. You need specialists to program every movement for every specific task. If you can just tell a robot, organize these parts by size, and it figures out how.
That's the promise anyway. I'd love to see more data on how often it succeeds versus how often it needs human intervention.
Fair. Although they did mention something interesting about the architecture. The embodied reasoning model is separate from the vision language action model. So you've got this high-level planner that's doing the strategic thinking and then a separate system handling the actual fine motor control.
Which makes sense from an engineering standpoint. You're essentially splitting the cognitive load. One model focuses on what should I do and in what order, and the other focuses on how exactly do I manipulate this object with these appendages.
And here's where it gets really interesting for the AI side of things, not just robotics. The techniques they're developing for embodied reasoning, for planning multi-step tasks in the real world, adapting when things don't go as expected, coordinating between different systems, all of that has applications for digital agents too.
Oh, that's a good connection. The same challenges exist, right? Whether you're a robot trying to organize a garage or an AI agent trying to plan and execute a complex workflow on a computer.
Exactly. You need to observe the state of the environment, reason about what steps to take, execute those steps, monitor whether they worked, and adapt if they didn't. The fact that Google's testing these capabilities in the physical world, where the feedback is immediate and obvious, like the screwdriver either goes on the pegboard or it doesn't, that's actually a really robust training ground.
And anything they learn there could transfer to making digital agents more reliable. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Right? So this isn't just cool robots. This is Google advancing their ability to build systems that can operate autonomously in complex, unpredictable environments, which is, kind of the whole game for getting to really useful AI.
Okay, I'm officially more excited about this than I was 5 minutes ago.
And we haven't even talked about the other stuff Google dropped, because Gemini Robotics 2 was just one piece of this massive update. They also announced Gemini 3.5 Flash Lite, Gemini 3.6 Flash, a new cybersecurity-focused model called Gemini 3.5 Flash Cyber.
And apparently a music model and an update to Notebook LM, which is now called Gemini Notebook. They really did cram a lot into this announcement.
Okay, so let's hit the models, because the positioning here is really interesting. Gemini 3.5 Flash Lite is being described as their fastest, most cost-effective model, optimized specifically for high-speed agentic workflows.
So that's clearly competing in the same space as OpenAI's Luna and Terra, the smaller, cheaper, faster models for tasks where you don't need the full power of the flagship.
Exactly. And then Gemini 3.6 Flash is positioned as the more capable option, faster and more accurate than before, but the interesting detail is they say it uses significantly fewer tokens.
Which matters a lot for cost at scale. If you can get the same or better results with fewer tokens, that's a direct reduction in API costs for developers.
Right. And this is clearly Google responding to pricing pressure in the market, which actually leads us perfectly into the OpenAI news, because they just announced some pretty aggressive price cuts.
Yeah, this caught my attention. GPT 5.6 Luna is getting an 80% price reduction. That's not a typo, 80%.
That's a massive cut, and Terra is dropping by 20%, which is still significant. Meanwhile, they're also offering a faster option for Soul in the API.
So let's put this in context. Luna and Terra are the smaller, more efficient models in the GPT 5.6 family. They're designed for tasks where you don't need the full reasoning capability of Soul, but you need fast, cheap inference at scale.
Right. And an 80% price cut for Luna means that tasks that were already pretty affordable are now frankly almost trivial in cost. We're talking fractions of a cent for interactions that would have cost real money just a generation ago.
And OpenAI specifically mentioned that these price reductions flow through to how usage is counted in Codex and ChatGPT work, which means enterprise customers get more value from their subscriptions.
Which is a smart move competitively, because if you're a company deciding between OpenAI and Google or Anthropic, and suddenly your usage budget goes 5x further on OpenAI,
that's a compelling reason to stay in the ecosystem. Although I imagine Google's price cuts on their models are pretty competitive too.
Oh, for sure. This is clearly an arms race on the cost efficiency dimension. And actually, OpenAI posted something really interesting about this. They said, quote, "Making advanced intelligence more abundant and affordable is central to our mission to ensure AGI benefits all of humanity."
Which is the mission statement, yes, but they also added that these efficiency gains came with the help of GPT 5.6 Soul. So they're using their most advanced model to optimize their entire stack.
Which is kind of beautifully recursive, right? The most capable AI helping to make AI in general more efficient and accessible.
It is. And there's something important happening here that I think is worth highlighting. We're seeing the cost of intelligence, artificial intelligence, drop dramatically, while capability stays the same or increases. That's historically what happens with transformative technologies.
Oh, absolutely. It's following the same curve as computing power or storage or bandwidth. The cost per unit of capability decreases exponentially over time.
Right, but the difference here is the pace. We're seeing 80% price reductions not over decades, but over months. That's a different kind of curve.
And it raises interesting questions about what happens when AI inference becomes essentially free, like what applications become possible when the cost barrier disappears.
Well, we're already seeing it with agents, right? The whole agentic workflow concept, where an AI is making multiple calls, using tools, iterating on solutions, that only makes economic sense if each individual inference is cheap.
Exactly. Which brings us to this really fascinating thread that OpenAI posted about benchmarks. And I know benchmarks don't sound exciting, but stay with me because this is actually important.
I saw this one. They're basically saying that a benchmark score reflects not just the model, but also the harness and settings used to run it.
Right. And specifically for long-running agents, they mentioned that, quote, retaining reasoning and compacting context lets the model build on what it has already learned, which is a subtle but important point.
Okay, unpack that for people who aren't deep in the weeds on how these things work.
Sure. So when you're benchmarking a model, testing how well it performs, you're not just measuring the raw capability of the AI. You're also measuring the entire system around it. How much context can it hold? How does it summarize or compact that context as conversations get longer? Can it retain the important parts of its reasoning while discarding unnecessary details?
So two different teams could test the exact same model and get different scores based on how they set up the test.
Exactly. And for agent workflows, this matters even more because agents are doing long, multi-step tasks. If your system can't efficiently manage context as the agent works through a problem, performance degrades.
So this is OpenAI basically saying, don't just look at our benchmark numbers in isolation. Understand that the infrastructure around the model matters too.
Right, but it's also them highlighting something they're doing well by saying retaining reasoning and compacting context lets the model build on what it has already learned. They're implicitly saying we've built systems that do this effectively.
Which is fair, but it also makes comparing models across providers harder if everyone's running different harnesses with different context management strategies.
Yeah, it's not apples to apples, and I think that's actually the point they're making. There's been this tendency to treat benchmark scores as absolute measures, when really they're contingent on a bunch of implementation details.
This feels like the kind of nuance that matters a lot to developers actually building with these tools, but might not be obvious to casual observers.
Absolutely. And it's good that OpenAI is being transparent about it, because as these models become more capable and the use cases become more complex, the infrastructure and tooling around the models becomes just as important as the models themselves.
Okay, we should probably touch on some of the other Google announcements before we run out of time. There was a lot in that thread.
Yes. So beyond the robotics and the core model updates, there's Gemini 3.5 Flash Cyber, which is really interesting from a positioning standpoint.
This is the cybersecurity-focused model, right? Optimized for finding and fixing software vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And the key detail is it's available exclusively to governments and trusted partners, which tells you this is being treated as a sensitive capability.
Which makes sense. A model that's really good at finding vulnerabilities could be used defensively to secure systems, but it could also potentially be used offensively.
Right. So by limiting access to verified partners, Google's trying to keep it in the hands of people using it for defense and security research, not exploitation.
It's a reasonable approach, although it does raise questions about who counts as a trusted partner and how that's determined.
Fair point. I imagine there's a whole vetting process. But from a capability standpoint, having an AI that can scan codebases at scale looking for security issues could be hugely valuable.
Especially as codebases get larger and more complex. Human security researchers can only review so much code.
Exactly. And if you can automate the initial scan to flag potential issues, then humans can focus on the complex judgment calls and novel vulnerability patterns.
Although I'd still want human verification before deploying any automated fixes. Software security is not the place to move fast and break things.
Oh, for sure. But even just automated detection is a big step forward. And then there's the other stuff Google mentioned. They launched something called Nano Banana 2 in Google Earth, which lets you reimagine places and generate custom images using satellite and aerial imagery.
Wait, Nano Banana? Is that really what they called it?
That's what the announcement says, Nano Banana 2, which is, I have to say, a delightful name for a model.
It really is, and the use case is interesting, being able to generate images based on real-world satellite data. I imagine that's useful for urban planning, environmental modeling, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or even just for visualization, like what would this area look like if we added more green space, or how would this building look from different angles?
That's actually pretty cool for architects and planners. And then there's Lyria 3.5, which is a music model.
Yes, this is Google DeepMind's music generation model, and it's now powering something called Google Flow Music. I don't have a ton of details on that, but it's part of their push into creative AI applications.
Music generation has gotten surprisingly good recently. I'm curious how this compares to some of the other tools that have been getting attention.
Same. And then the last piece is that Notebook LM is now called Gemini Notebook. And they've launched something called Collections, which is a new way to organize your notebooks.
Okay, that's interesting because Notebook LM,
Gemini Notebook, has been getting a lot of organic traction with researchers and students.
Yeah, people really like it for summarizing sources and generating study guides, so adding better organization tools makes sense as the user base grows.
And the rebrand to Gemini Notebook brings it under the main Gemini brand umbrella, which probably helps with discoverability.
For sure. It's wild how much Google just casually dropped in these announcements. Like any one of these things could have been its own headline, and they just bundled them all together.
It does feel a bit like they're trying to match the pace of announcements from other labs. There's been this sense that Google has this incredible research capability, but doesn't always move as quickly on product releases.
Right, and announcements like this signal we're shipping, we're iterating, we're competing on every dimension: models, pricing, applications, robotics.
Which is probably the right strategy given how competitive this space has become. You can't just have good research anymore. You have to execute on products.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got a few quick hits to run through, and these are actually pretty fun because they're more demos and visual stuff from the robotics announcement.
Oh, good. I love the demo videos.
So first up, Google posted a test of multi-robot collaboration where they challenged their Apollo and Duo robots to tidy up a messy garage together. The high-level reasoning model broke down the work and assigned tasks to each robot.
This is the one where they're actually coordinating in real time, right? Not just running pre-programmed sequences in parallel.
Exactly. They're dynamically allocating tasks based on what needs to be done and what each robot is capable of. So if one robot is better suited for a particular task, the reasoning model can assign it accordingly.
That's genuinely impressive if it works reliably. Most multi-robot systems require really careful choreography to avoid conflicts.
Right, and from the footage, it looks like they're navigating around each other, not just in separate zones, which means the system is handling spatial coordination and collision avoidance on the fly.
Okay, that's cool. What else?
There's a demo showing Gemini Robotics 2 on the FR3 Duo platform, that's the one with 2 arms, doing 20 minutes of uninterrupted real-time tool handling. And they specifically call out emergent recovery behaviors and generalized dexterity.
Emergent recovery behaviors is the key phrase there. That means the robot is encountering problems and figuring out solutions that weren't explicitly programmed.
Which is exactly what you want, right? Because you can't anticipate every possible failure mode in advance. The robot needs to be able to adapt.
Yeah, that's the difference between a fragile system and a robust one. If it can only succeed under perfect conditions, it's not really that useful.
And generalized dexterity suggests it's handling different types of tools and objects, not just one specific task it's been trained on.
Which, again, is important for real-world applications. A robot that can only pick up one specific type of object in one specific orientation is not very helpful.
Exactly. So these demos, if they're representative of typical performance and not just cherry-picked successes, suggest that Google's made real progress on the generalization problem.
That's the big if, of course, but the fact that they're showing 20 continuous minutes is a good sign. Shorter demos are easier to cherry-pick.
Fair point. And actually, you can try some of the new Gemini models yourself right now. Google posted that Gemini 3.6 Flash and 3.5 Flash Lite are available in the Gemini app and on the web.
Oh, so you can just select them from the model drop-down menu?
Yep, just go to the Gemini app or the website, click the model selector, and you'll see 3.6 Flash and 3.5 Flash Lite as options.
That's a nice low-friction way to let people experience the improvements. It's one thing to read about faster, more accurate performance, but actually trying it gives you a feel for the difference.
Absolutely. And if you want to dive deeper into all of these announcements, Google created a Gemini Drops hub where you can learn more about everything that's new.
Gemini Drops is what they're calling these monthly update packages?
Apparently, which is a decent branding for regular product updates. It sets the expectation that new stuff is coming on a regular cadence.
And helps combat that perception that Google sits on capabilities for too long before shipping.
Exactly. Okay, so bringing this all together, what's the big picture here? We've got Google shipping a major robotics platform, multiple model updates across different speed and cost tiers, and specialized models for things like cybersecurity and music generation. Meanwhile, OpenAI is slashing prices and being transparent about how benchmarks work. What does it all mean?
I think we're seeing the market mature in some really important ways. The frontier of pure capability, like what's the smartest thing AI can do, is still advancing. But there's also intense competition on cost, speed, specialization, and real-world applications.
Right. It's not just about building the biggest model anymore. It's about building the right model for the right use case at the right price point.
And the robotics piece is Google signaling that they're serious about taking AI out of the digital realm and into the physical world. That's a long-term bet, but it's a really important one.
Yeah, because the ultimate test of intelligence is whether it can actually accomplish useful tasks in the messy, unpredictable real world. Chatbots are great, but robots that can manipulate objects, navigate spaces, and coordinate on complex tasks, that's a different level of capability.
And if the same intelligence layer can work across different robot platforms, that dramatically accelerates how quickly this technology can scale. You're not starting from scratch with every new robot body.
Exactly. So I think we're going to look back on this period as the time when AI started to seriously bridge the digital-physical divide. Not just understanding the world through text and images, but actually operating in it.
That's a compelling vision. I'm still going to wait for more real-world testing data before I get too excited about domestic robots, but the trajectory is encouraging.
That's fair. And honestly, the industrial and commercial applications are probably going to come first anyway. Manufacturing, warehousing, logistics, those are environments where you can start with more structured tasks and gradually expand capabilities.
Right, and where the economic value is clear enough to justify the investment in the technology.
For sure. All right, I think that's a good place to wrap up. We covered a lot today. Google's big robotics announcement with Gemini Robotics 2, their suite of new models including Flash, Light, and the upgraded Flash, OpenAI's major price cuts on Luna and Terra, and some really interesting discussion about how benchmarks work.
It's been a busy couple of weeks in AI, and if this pace continues, we're in for a wild ride.
Absolutely. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to Semper AI Digest so you don't miss future episodes. And hey, share it with someone who'd geek out over robot teams cleaning garages.
Or anyone who's building with AI and cares about pricing and performance. There is something for everyone in today's news.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you in the next one.
Until next time.